Hello, everyone, and welcome to this client challenge session with addressing Remo. And we're privileged to have Hoyen, who is the founder of Remo, as well as Samantha, who's with their business development team. Samantha, you can tell me the exact terminology. I'm going to bring you up to the front and ask you to introduce yourselves. And then Hoyen can talk a bit around, and Hoyen's is already up. Let's see, Samantha and Vas. As speakers, you can just accept and come straight up, Vas. There we go.
Seems to be working. Yep.
Yeah. So I know there's a number of students from my class in here. There's also some from Columbia, I saw. But this will mainly be recording, and I'll send the recording to Vas, and it will be uploaded for the other students to see. Vas, to start off, you're the director of X Culture. I don't know if you have a few words before we ask Hoyen.
Well, I just wanted to thank Gordon for connecting us with this wonderful, interesting company and express my interest in this particular company and challenge. So we live in very interesting times when not only everything moves online, but specifically conferences move online. And this summer was for me the sort of a challenge or a collection of challenges as we were trying to organize a few conferences online through X Culture, but then also participated in a few online conferences like the Academy of Management and Academy of International Business. This was also the spring and summer of when people were learning how to use Zoom and WebEx and Microsoft Teams and all of that. And so when another company came along and said, we have a video conferencing software, first I was like, well, yet another one. But then I looked at the functionality and it actually may be revolutionary. It has some of the functions that none of the other platforms have. And in fact, it could be a sort of the magic pill and the solution, a silver bullet to the online conferencing. So I'm extremely curious to first learn more about Remo and its product, but also I think it would be a very interesting endeavor for the students to see how this particular platform is different from other platforms. How can you survive in this ruthless war of video conferencing platforms that that have sprouted in the last few months? So I just found this to be a very, very appropriate challenge for this time. And so thank you so much, Gordon, for putting us in touch. Again, for this time, I cannot think of a better, interesting, more challenging students. And I can't wait to learn more about Remo and its platform.
And just so the students know that who watch the recording, I'm actually using the Remo for every one of my classes. And what's really interesting is, we have the students have engagement. They can meet each other at the tables. But when I finish my class, they stick around in the virtual classroom and they talk to each other. And it's really facilitates the team project exercises. They can coordinate well and talk about the project. So it's been a good environment, unlike the alternatives where everyone just clicks off. So my students keep sticking around for another half hour to an hour after I'm gone. I get the sign in, sign outs log, so I can see that.
And that's exactly what was missing this summer at the Academy of Management and the Academy of International Business conferences. We all thought that we go to conferences to present papers and see others present. Turns out what happens between the presentations and sort of as somebody's presenting at the tables, that's the actual value, or at least a lot of value of the conference comes from that. And somehow the software that everybody uses, like for example, Zoom, it does have the breakout rooms, but it's not quite the same. And so I'm kind of hoping that Remo maybe sort of cracked the code and we'll figure out how to turn an online conference into this more interpersonal exchange experience that a normal conference is. So let's see how it goes.
So Hoyen, I see in your write-up you say one of the audiences are the people, just the guests to the program that come and experience Remo, because then they become advocates. So why don't you go in and talk about yourself, how you came about this idea, and then the challenge.
Yeah, sure. So really, so I'll talk a little bit about like how we kind of came up with it. So it really first started with like, I originally had a fully remote team. So everyone sort of kind of worked from home. And when I first started, I was trying to solve a problem where we all know now is like when everyone's working from home, human connections is kind of hard. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to do. Um, and so when we were focusing on how do you create kind of serendipity and sort of these sort of casual conversations that really weren't really freely available when you talk about online meetings right now. Today, or before the pandemic, video conferences was strictly used just for meetings, really. And it was more of like this like one to many model. One person is speaking at any point in time, which I think worked really, really well because most of the time that was what video conference was used for. But nowadays, we're realizing that, applying Zoom to like all the whole entire spectrum of all types of human communication, clearly that doesn't really make sense. Like, I mean, I'm sure you guys may have been, I don't know if you guys have been to like a Zoom happy hour or a large Zoom call with like 30 people. How many people can really speak at once? Really, it's just one person, and it's always this traffic cop. It's like, hey, Dr. Gordon, what would you like to say? Oh, Mark, can you please mute for a second? I can't hear what Dr. Gordon's saying. And there's this traffic cop kind of guy that's doing. And so the questions that we asked ourselves was, is that really a human experience? And clearly, like, we all don't in real life do that. We don't all stand in a circle, everyone facing each other and talking one at a time. That's not human. And so really kind of like the core of what we think about when it comes to design and comes to product is how do we make it human centric? And this is a little bit, not to say that it's a little, the difference, not user centric or customer centric, it kind of means the same thing, it's except that we take that concept and we bring it forward to the next level, meaning that, we use things that it's easily understandable by people because it reminds you of the real world. Like, we don't want to introduce to you something that is new. It should be something that you already know from your real, like the tables. These are very basic, simple to understand things. I don't need to teach you what a table is. You already know what it is. You can kind of guess what it means. And so that's kind of like where we kind of came through and how we, our core kind of vision with Remo. The core vision of Remo is really like, how do you create authentic conversations that drive meaningful relationships? And the deeper part of that is how Remo does it is we create the environment, context that allow way better authentic or more effective conversations, because the context and the framing of what you're doing, of how you're doing in the space you are, affects really. And there's research that says this, that if you're brainstorming and you sit in a room with a lot of inspiration, let's say you're brainstorming on a new Nike shoe. If you sit in a room and there's all these branded Nike shoes, different shoes, you will come up with newer and better ideas than if you were just sitting there in a blank room, right? So what that means is that human beings frame whatever activity they're doing based off of the environment that they're in. It sounds kind of obvious, right? Like, if I was in a jail cell and you told me to, like, do something, like write something creative, I mean, it can be done, I'm sure, but it's probably kind of hard.
Yeah.
And so the framing, that is what Remo is about. How do you frame it with the environment? What really, really special? You can frame the environment according to the activity that you're doing.
So in the instance of my classroom, I frame it with a range of videos related to the content I'm delivering. So, that's what I was excited. It actually allowed the students to, at the beginning, go watch one of my videos on the Matrix series, or look at the map about Asia. So it did quite well. So tell us, Len, you're only 2 years old in terms of the company, not you. And,
I wish I was.
So where are you at this stage in terms of the rollouts? How many users do you have? Or can you tell, because you have yours is mainly small to medium size businesses predominantly. You've slowly been getting into the university market. What's your user profile look like in volumes?
So it's monthly active users. So monthly active users are around 220,000 monthly active users, monthly users. Is monthly unique, by the way. So people that come in multiple times is probably 3 times that.
Yeah.
For total number of guests. When it comes to like profile, we have a lot of that are. We started off with a lot of like event agencies, marketing departments. Nowadays, we're seeing a lot of large associations. So like the bar association of whatever sort of topic or niche you have. And then now we have obviously a lot of universities. So yeah, many universities have already kind of inbounded in, and universities use it for a variety of reasons. They use it anywhere from classroom instruction, workshops, events, tours, to office hours. It's really, really broad how universities use it.
So is that your sweet spot, or where's your sweet spot? What's your target market, or is it just everywhere? How do you go after each? Because you have different segments.
Yeah. So it's a bit unique. So first off, I want to share with everyone. So well done for everyone for attending something online. Well done for attending something and doing something that's a little bit weird, a little bit different during this times of pandemic. The time of right now is so unique. This is not a once in a decade or once in a 20, 30 year opportunity. This only happens once every 100 years. Most people may not experience it, but the last one that occurred was in 1918.
Yeah.
So what that, and just to give you some context, like many of the most largest companies have come out of the greatest tragedies. So 2001, when the stock market crashed, you've got Amazon, you've got Google, you got all that. 2008, when it crashed, you've got Uber, you've got Pinterest, you've got all these companies coming out. Instagram. So the timing of that right now, there is no sort of like playbook or kind of like future in terms of like how we do it. In our case, it's a little bit strange because of the pandemic. We have so much inbound that the inbound changes over time. So right now we when I talk about like, oh, here are some of our clients, what I mean by that is that's what customers are coming to us for. Now, for us, for our most desirable customer base, I think what you were talking about, but I can't tell you exactly what is the industry yet because I'm getting it from all industries. But I can share what are the types of customers that come in that they have to kind of embody these certain type of characteristics. And I'll share with you what I mean. So the characteristics that we have seen most success with are company or any kind of company or environment or event organizer that holds events that are 500 people or below, and they host more than 1 or 2 events per month.
Okay.
So they host small but frequent.
So is that sort of they're event managers? They're professional event managers?
That's right.
Is that right?
Right. That's right. So there are people who host events. It could be an event organizer, an event manager. It could be a marketing department. It could be an association where this person used to organize offline events, but now organize online events. Right. The key thing is that the buyer is the event organizer, and the people that are that do run the events have to run it frequently, and they typically have larger event budgets. So they have an event budget. So people that don't have an event budget, typically that's not useful. It's not very. It's not that it's not useful, but they don't have the money to buy it.
Your ideal is to have an organization where they run events continuously, and almost the same person is responsible. So you don't have to constantly resell your proposition.
That's
they
right.
bought into the proposition and just reuse it over and over again, I would think.
Right.
How common is that?
I mean, it's very common. It's usually just one person that organizes events. So yeah, it's very common. It's represented by one person or a group of people in in an organization, and they kind of dictate like the event schedule, for example, or they manage the events for their community or for their company. So yeah, that is the sweet spot.
Have you seen it, the way they use Remo vary by country? So this is a global, X Culture is global. Students will look at various markets. Is there any difference, cross-cultural differences in how they use a product like Remo or even the other products?
Absolutely, 100%. So I think from a Western cultural perspective, like for example, like Europe and the US and Australia, for example, like our what we would say Western culture, I think it's generally about the same. Like they host networking events and then some kind of seminar, webinar like this, and they network again. The only ones that are more specific is where like their culture is more drastically different. So for example, like Japan. Japan is very different. Like they host a lot of internal events and a lot of like speed dating and speed networking. And they're hosting events for celebrities to like do meet and greets, for example.
Okay.
So Japan's probably like mostly the outlier.
And I noticed you have two people on your customer service, I think, dedicated to Japan. At least when I was there.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's correct.
Is that because of the volume of business is quite high there?
Yeah. Japan is our second largest market. Yeah, it's been quite a ride. Yeah, we get a lot of interesting customers that come in from the most unlikeliest places.
Okay. So what's your challenge? What do you want the students to do?
I'm gonna let Sam answer this question.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Some of the students, have they read through the challenge yet, Dr. Gordon, in terms of like all of the various different questions that we've posed, or is that something that they haven't had the chance to see yet?
So they've all had to have access to the challenge document. Whether they've read it or not, I can't tell you. When I assign something in my class, I actually only do LinkedIn posts, and videos in my class because I know from past years, students don't read documents unless they have to. So I suspect this, some of the students will have waited they're going to see the videos first because that's easier on them, and then they'll read the document.
Yeah, I think from our side, the document we drew up was pretty long, so it's okay if they haven't quite read it. We covered a whole bunch of different challenge questions from sales and growth side all the way through to product, what our roadmap might or should look like, all the way through to the problem that Hoyin mentioned we have in wherever COVID affects that region or that industry the most at that time, we'll suddenly see a big surge of leads and users from that area. And so definitely something that we're looking at in terms of what are the core verticals we should be focusing on. What are some particular use cases that maybe the students will discover that haven't quite been used yet on Remo. I know there's a part of the challenge where they may actually need to go out and do a bunch of potential customer surveys as well. So that should all be pretty interesting around sales and growth. I think, over the period of COVID, we've gone through such crazy growth in the last 6 months that, a lot of challenges have popped up from that. Everything from, we get feature requests left, right, and center. Should we be more mobile friendly? Should we develop a native app? So everything from, product roadmap through to how to create more stickiness for our product. I know that all of those questions are in there. So there's a huge variety. I think we pretty much covered almost every business function. So depending on their interest there, I'm sure they'll find an area that they're passionate about.
Are there any particular markets that you would like to penetrate more, or regions? Is there any geographic orientation you would like to see?
Currently, majority of our leads are coming from the North American market, so Canada and the US. I would say about 90% of our leads are coming from there. And at present, over the last couple of months, it definitely has been mostly higher education institutions. And so that's kind of a trend that we're seeing. But again, as Hoyin mentioned, Previous to that, it was Japan. We had a big surge in Japanese users after we kind of went viral there. Had a lot of interesting use cases. Someone even held their wedding on Remo in Japan. So not just business use cases, there's also personal use cases as well. But I would say in terms of regions, there are certain regions that we haven't quite tapped yet, Africa, Middle East. So that's definitely something, if there is the opportunity there, it'd be interesting to look at. But yeah, I would say actually it's more verticals because we are seeing interest from all over. But I think what would be really interesting for us is to truly understand, okay, what are maybe the 5 most common use cases in particular industries that we can kind of focus on.
Okay. South America, how are you doing? Because we have Camille from Colombia here.
I think we do actually have a number of Latin American users as well. We do have someone on our customer success team who speaks Spanish, so.
Okay. So in terms of the challenge, then you're not really worried about geographic resource constraints in terms of as the environment takes off and you get more users. How easy is it to scale in your business? Or you're saying Hoynes should take it.
Take it? Okay. I mean, it is very easy to scale. We can scale within the event building itself. We can scale up to 1,000 people, but you can have multiple event buildings. So we've had over 10,000 person events, and so yeah, it is very scalable, extremely scalable.
But in terms of let's say, so you know how Zoom all of a sudden took off at the start of the COVID-19, and its ability to scale up and manage that, and had security issues.
Right.
It's sort of there's no challenge in terms of if you it's suddenly Twix and you get the network effect and it just goes wild. Are you guys able to handle that load?
At the moment, yeah. I mean, surprisingly, yes. It's primarily, due to the fact that, at the end of the day, it's all just small video calls, and you can just do a lot of video calls. I mean, the things that are tough is if you have one call with 1,000 people, that's 1,000 people, everyone can talk to each other and everyone can see each other, which is what Zoom does. That's a tough challenge that we can't do. We don't do that. So everyone's always asking oh, I want to see everyone. I want to see all 50 people all on my screen. And one thing that we don't do. And so these things that are just inherently more scalable and things that are, what Zoom does, we just don't tackle those problems yet because they're too tough. You got to be a multi-billion-dollar company to kind of tackle those things. I would also say that Zoom was created in a very different era than it is today. Zoom was created 10, 15 years ago, where if you were a video conferencing company, you had to build your own infrastructure. You had to buy all the data centers and all that kind of stuff. So they already had all the pipes. They already laid all the groundwork. So they're in a different position, different time. And also their products, you have to install it, so it's a different thing. Yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah.
So how is the architecture different than the Zoom? I sort of saw WebEx as the ancient one, and it was frustrating. Zoom a bit, at least you could put video backgrounds on. How is your platform different then?
So with Zoom, it's first of all, you have to install a program into your computer. And with that, you can do a lot more things with the algorithm and stuff. You can make it really compact, you can compress it better. That's why Zoom is the gold standard. And you can communicate better, you can just go around, you can just do a lot, you have a lot more control over what you're doing, what you're presenting. But with our platform, you can log in through a browser. So I'm only limited by what the browser can do, number one. Number two is I have another middle layer between my application and the actual hardware itself. So there's there's the OS and then there's the browser. Whereas Zoom is just the application and then the OS and then the the hardware, and that's it. So that additional layer does have limitations, but we believe it's a good trade-off. It provides a lot more accessibility.
Okay. I haven't inquired on this before, but what's the maximum number of people I can have on my screen at one point?
It depends on like what it depends on like which plan you have. The highest we have is 10. If you're on the highest plan, it's 10.
Oh, so it goes by the seats. So I could have the whole table on the screen.
You could have you can have 10 people on the screen, like the people that you choose. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I haven't tried. I'm going to try that in my next class. Okay.
Yeah.
When we spoke earlier, you also talked that you're actually looking for to hire people if you can find them, because you have a global talent. You're basically looking for people globally. Is that also part of as you go through this? There may be opportunities for people in different countries, or what type of resources?
Yeah. So we're a fully remote company, so we're heavily hiring in Europe and the United States. Yeah, for sure. And Asia too. I mean, we're in general like we just want to hire great people. That's all. That's pretty much as simple as that.
We are always looking for interns. So if any of your students are ever interested in work experience, we have plenty of roles for them.
And our internships are amazing. I would say they're like really, really awesome. So if you want to go for an internship, Sam, where should we direct them?
If I may add to that, now it's always a very coveted opportunity by the students, so they always want to have opportunities to gain some experience. But especially now that many regular internships have been canceled, I assume your internships can be done online, right? So it doesn't have to be. So that makes it much more attractive in this environment, because I know at many universities an internship is a required part of the curriculum, and all of a sudden now the normal options are not available. So I think you will have a very lengthy list of applicants fighting for those positions that you may be able to offer.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Dr. Gordon, if anyone you know is interested, they can always email me.
Okay.
Are you sure? Maybe you should put it on Fresh Teams, Sam. I think you should put it on Fresh Teams. I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, emailing, so be careful with that, because again, we have about 6,000 people in this semester.
Yeah.
So even if only like 2% decide to apply, which I think it will be much higher than that, you will be dealing with hundreds of emails, going your way. So you probably want to either set up some sort of a form, or maybe we should think of a process, because otherwise you will end up with too many emails.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Dr. Gordon, I'll send you a form instead.
Okay. So I guess we have about a dozen different clients that the students are looking at. So, they're obviously going to look at 2 or 3 of them, narrow down, watch the videos, try to describe. What's your pitch for why they should basically work on the Remo challenge versus any other challenge?
You want me to take? Is this Sam, or you wanna go?
I don't know. Well, Sam's your salesperson, right?
I'll let Sam take it. I'll let Sam take it.
I think it's a super interesting time. I think, the virtual events industry, even just looking at some of our clients right now, the conversations that we were having with them 6 months ago were more around like, oh my God, I can't hold a physical event anymore. I have to move everything online. Zoom's kind of not a great fit for what I want to do. Can I do it on Remo? And, 6 months down the line, the conversations that we're having now is that, our leads are so much more educated. They know what's out there. There are a lot of other competitors that are have similar, slightly different offerings as to how they can run their virtual events. I think it's a really interesting industry to be a part of right now. Because it is so new and because there's so much action and so much happening. So I think, even just looking at the competitive landscape, looking at how this has changed the events industry forever, will people ever go back to physical events? I mean, who knows, right? It's like 1/10 of the cost of holding a physical event. You don't have to rent a space. You don't have to worry about logistics of people flying around and getting to a particular event space. It's so convenient. It takes 10 minutes to organize. I mean, how long did it take you to set up your classroom, Dr. Gordon? Like literally no time.
Well, I just copied my existing class.
So I think, if you're interested in looking at remote tools and how the landscape for workspaces are changing and how the landscapes for events are changing and how this pandemic is really affecting so many different industries, all the various different competitors that Remo has now, I think all of these things are definitely things that you'll look into on the challenge. I think on a product side, what Ho-Yin mentioned is really important, that we're a very human-centric company. And I think, us developing our future roadmap and what we'll include, what we'll focus on, we have a very unique kind of vision and way that we approach that as well. It's not about being the best video conferencing tool and having the best architecture out there for video conferencing. It's honestly about meaningful relationships, meaningful connections, and how we can foster that on this platform.
Okay, great. So I would encourage the students to, experiment with Remo, get a feel for it. My own class is getting that, but not all professors are sort of willing to adopt things early. I think the students should ask some of their professors to give it a try. But also don't just think of the academic environment. Although you may think about it for the clubs but how can you use it in a business context or in a community context? How can it be propagated within, and you're working as a global team, so you're going to be covering 5 countries. You have to figure out what country you want to focus on, what environment to propagate it through. As you develop the challenge or respond to the challenge. Any other final comments you have? We usually do these things about 45 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, in general, I think this challenge is really interesting because, there is this new normal that's happening right now. And you want to, this is going to be the most drastic technological adoption change that's going to happen. You're probably not going to see something like this happen in the next 50 to 60 years. Probably not in the kids that are here right now. Probably never. You're not going to see this again in your lifetime. Potentially, at least not this big of a step change. If we do see another pandemic, we will be a lot more educated, and therefore the step change won't be as big. We'll be more prepared, right? So anything that's going to be as a huge step change like this, where you have increased adoption, such massive adoption on technology, it's pretty much this is going to be it, probably for the next while. So working on, in my opinion, when you careers and what you're planning on doing, you want to focus on something where it is we're basically at a watershed moment. There's things that you can do. You can find a job or work in a mindset in the past, which was pre-COVID or post-COVID. And right now it's very clear that post-COVID is going to be the way how the world's is moving towards. And so you want to be working in those industries that are benefiting in these areas. It's not just us. I'll give you an example. E-commerce is doing really well. There's a lot of tech firms and technology that are doing really, really well, not just in e-commerce and stuff, but that is sort of the areas that the jobs are at, because the whole kind of economy may not do well. But surprisingly enough, there are bright spots. And as you're thinking about coming out of college and your university and you want to find a job, you want to work in these areas where you can be in those bright spots, because that's where they're hiring aggressively. For us, we're hiring very, very aggressively right now. It's funny. You have companies they're struggling, and you have some companies are doing really, really well. So I would use that as sort of a thought as well.
Okay. If students have any questions, they can put it in the Q&A. Sorry?
If I can ask a question on behalf of the If I may ask one question on behalf of the students. So we do a lot of surveys of the students asking what they want to do when they graduate, and about 80% of them say they want to start their own business. which is probably not surprising given that all of our students are either MBA or business students. Now, so you did start a business. So essentially our students want to be in a few years where you are now. So any words of wisdom and advice, or if you could go back in time, you said Remo is 2 years old. I'm sure there are some things maybe you would have done differently, from today's point of view, based on your wisdom and experience now. So any words of wisdom for students who are trying to do what you are doing now, coming out of school and starting their own businesses?
Yeah, I can share a little bit of that. Like, there's several pieces. By the way, I have like another presentation just about this, just kind of my thoughts on this.
Can we maybe organize a webinar sometime, right on this, because it's a topic that students are very interested in, and they say you can learn from your own mistakes, but you can also learn from mistakes of others. So maybe you can share some experiences.
Yeah, it's a story. So how I share it is my story, and then at each point of my story, I'll say here's the principle. Here is the principle that I learned, and then it just goes through the entire. So it goes through my major successes and failures, and then I'll walk through what I did for a lot of them, and then it will I can do that. I can do that. So I'll give you guys a snippet.
Yeah, maybe let's do the timing and do it.
Hoyan's actually started 3 businesses. So he's not a first time founder, so he's got a lot of stories.
All right.
Yeah. I've thanks. So yeah, I mean, I can share with you a few tidbits, right? I think it's really important when you start, you have to first of all realize where your skills are at. You need to take account of your skills, and what you're good, what you're not good at, and what you need to learn more of. Because you could start a business on your own, but you could easily get lost in not knowing what you're trying to do, which is what I did. I kind of got lost. I was I was doing this, trying this, and eventually I kind of I just had to do it a bunch of times, and then I was able to get this. A lot of our business is luck. It is luck. It's hard work. That's just table stakes. You have to work hard to be successful in general. That's not it is a little bit of luck. It's not all that. So that's so you need to kind of keep trying. So that's number one. Number two, and this sounds really obvious, is if you're really good at fundraising, for example, then go ahead, you can fundraise for sure. Go for it. Fundraise and do that. If you've identified yourself and say, hey, you know what, I'm really good at raising money and talking to investors and getting them to invest in me, perfect. But for me, I'm okay. I'm not super amazing at fundraising. So I did try, but for all of my startups, I have not received any VC funding, 0. And the company that I have for Remo, it's profitable already with 0 VC funding. So some people might be like, oh, that's kind of, don't know. But on the other hand, I don't have to, VCs have to sell a large.
Those pitches.
So there's pros and cons to that, but the key of how I was able to get there is I just created a business that just made money. That's just when you guys think about starting a business, you don't have to think about anything sexy. Oh, we got to do this new tech, new AI thing, the Uber of this, the Pinterest of that, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to do that to make money. You don't. You just need to make money. Because the moment you make money and you have, for me, I started off as a SaaS business, right? Which is you had monthly recurring revenue. Once you build revenue that's recurring, you then build something called capacity. You build resources. You have resources. Once you have resources on your own, you can then do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things versus this kind of one versus 0 kind of thing, which is oh, it's either I go get funding and make it, or I'm done and I don't have anything, right? That's a way to go about it if you're good at fundraising, but you don't have to. That's not necessarily the only way. If you can find a business and make money, then you use that resources to then invest in the next thing. And it's kind of, I don't know, maybe it sounds obvious to some people, but it wasn't obvious to me. And then once I realized I could do that, then I realized I'm just independent. I can do the things that I want to do. And that is powerful. You don't have to take this major dream at the beginning and say, hey, I'm going to create this like $1 billion unicorn. Like most likely your first business is going to suck. You should just accept it. Don't give yourself so much pressure. Just accept it. Your first businesses, you're probably going to fail. It's probably going to suck ass. Why? Because it's like you're just learning how to play the guitar. How many years do you think like, amazing guitar players, they had to play the guitar to learn in order to be really good at it? When they first played guitar, they all sucked. It's the same thing. You first start a business, you're going to suck. So you got to practice. You got to practice a lot. And so, but with a guitar player, you have to make money some way or else you can't go perform and go train more, right? So what do? You go play at venues, you go try to do this, you try to make some money, get some more resources. So at the end of the day, you just want to get a set of resources, and that allows you to kind of build the next thing.
Okay. Oyen, we have a question, and I'll actually bring Brandon up on the stage. I'll let him so he gets used to this. So I can see how you put on 5 people on stage.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey,
Brandon.
Brandon.
Oh, wait. Hey, everyone. Yeah. Hi, Hoen. Thanks for like sacrificing your time to be with us here today. Really appreciate that.
No worries.
Yeah. So Remo, super interesting company. So I just have some questions. So like most of my questions actually revolve around will be about the customers and the company. And why I'm asking these questions is because, as you know, we need to write this business report, and part of it is bulk of it is to provide recommendations. So I thought I've read the document you guys prepared, and like just want to ask these questions just to get a little bit more deeper context,
go for it.
and just get up to speed with the company. Yeah. So I think the first question is on like the customers. So actually, who are your customers who have the best retention? I understand that you gave some like characteristics earlier on in terms of like your best selling clients, but I'm thinking more along the lines of like customer retention, like after you acquire them. Like, do you have some sort of, you have a rough idea of like who are these customers?
So customers that basically host a lot of frequent events, those are like our best ones. Those are the ones that retain the most. And customers that have a lot of human networking associated with that. So for example, like surprisingly, law firms have a lot of networking events. Associations have a lot of networking events. And marketing companies that have marketing departments that host a lot of events where they view networking as like really, really important. So for example, like there's a company that does training, like workshop training for digital transformation. And they host like meetings like every few times a month. And so they value the human interaction part. And then that's how like they want to keep using it because they want to get that human interaction. They value it.
Makes sense. So my next question is a few questions on the company and product. So the first question is, what is the top feature that clients actually rave about? When after they use Remo, and when they evangelize it to their friends. What's like maybe the top 2 to 3 features that these clients actually rave about?
It's just the table. It's a table and they move around. It's the fact that you can like just hop into one table and just talk to someone, hop to another table, talk to someone. The floors, those are like the main. If you have had pick 2, those are the 2.
Oh, Brandon, you're on mute.
Okay,
Brandon, you're on mute. Hey.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So regarding the product features, what are some new features that are being prioritized right now and like are going to be pushed out in the next few months? And I think the reason why I ask is because there's a question on that. And I'm just thinking that I want to like focus on the right issues and not think of something that's already been thought about. So that's where this question is coming from.
So right now we're really focusing on like the map and how to like make the map sort of like a much more bigger piece of like the whole experience. We're also right now, we've already launched something called Run of Show, which allows people to like,
What do you mean map? You mean like the layout?
yeah, the layout. Sorry. Yeah, the layout. So people can customize their layouts more. There might be a much more bigger conference map. So for example, you have an event building here, which is what you see. But let's say you want to run several concurrent events. Like you want to run 4 buildings. So you might have like a conference map with 4 buildings, and you can click on one building and go to that map, go to that different building. So you might have like, 2 halls that are having keynotes. One hall is like a sponsorship lounge where people are networking. One of them is like an exhibitor hall, for example. So you can have different types of events happening all in the same sort of conference, larger conference, and people can jump from one place to another seamlessly. And then the second part is what I was saying was like Run of Show, which is like it's more for like hosts, how they kind of automate. It's a way to semi-automate the running of events is basically what it is. So you can set like a bunch of actions to like, for example, turn on the presentation, turn on the timer, turn on this video, and blah, blah, blah. And it's all kind of semi-automated. And so we're going towards this direction of having like templates.
That makes sense and sounds really interesting. I guess the idea is we want to make it like an actual conference hall and then you can just jump around. It sounds really cool. Okay, and like my last question is on.
Like, I see they also added floors, so not only you can jump from a table to table, but also go from one floor to another. So it actually, like a virtual environment. Did you think about this kind of Second Life type of environment? That's a whole different thing, right? The Second Life app, so that's a whole different virtual level, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's so we have something in mind for that. We have something in the work in mind for doing something like this. It's a bit further down the road, but yes, some kind of world where like you can connect all of the event buildings is something that we've been looking into.
Like
Yeah,
Minecraft style. So, but yeah, that's probably going to be a whole different.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We're just going to do one thing first. So focus is important. We're just going to do one thing first.
All right, and then my last question is like on like the customer journey / sales cycle. So how does like a typical sales cycle look like? And yeah, I'm just curious about that part.
I'll let Sam take this one.
Sorry, say that again, Brandon.
Yeah, so the question is on how does a typical sales cycle look like? So I'm thinking along the lines of like maybe an inbound comes in. Yep, got it.
Yeah, so pretty much all of our, we have crazy amounts of inbound right now, I guess, just because we're very lucky in this environment. I would say it's extremely time critical and time sensitive. So sales cycles can depend on basically when their next event is being held. How soon is that next event? So literally we have people that buy within 5 minutes of speaking to us. We have people that are much more prepared and they're actually planning their events for December or November. And they won't purchase until say October. But they're speaking to us now because they're evaluating different platforms and what would be like the best platform to go with for that particular event agenda and event structure that they're looking to hold. So I would say the sales cycle is varied. It is pretty much based on just when their next event is going to be held and how soon they actually have a need for the platform. I think like unlike other SaaS businesses, like we are an events platform, and so it is events based. It's not something, unless they're holding an event pretty much every day, it's not something that they need on a daily basis. So unlike say like Slack or accounting software, where it is pretty much something that is completely entrenched in their business ops, I think it's a little bit different for us. We're a bit more unique.
When it comes to sales, do these leads need to be nurtured? Meaning like, do they have multiple meetings, or can they actually be closed within like really quickly, like 1 or 2 meetings?
Yeah, so about 75% of our existing clientele and subscribers are actually self-serve channels. So meaning that they don't actually speak to a salesperson at all. So they do our 14-day free trial, which I would recommend all of you do if you'd like to learn more about the product. they do a 14-day free trial. They come to our guided tours, which are essentially our group demos. Again, please come to those if you'd like to learn more about the product. And then basically they either email us in order to address some of their more specific questions about use cases and how they can use Remo for their specific event coming up. But yeah, about 75% of them basically self-serve completely. So yeah.
Amazing, actually. It's really impressive. And maybe just a follow-up question to that. After the sales is closed, do you guys, and then probably the CS team, the customer success team takes over, do you guys segment the customer success team, meaning in terms of like, oh, you have like mid-tier, low-tier, and high-tier? And the reason I ask is I'm trying to figure out if it's more of like a self-serve product or like a product that requires more customer success attention, and how that works for the.
Yeah, so I think on both sides, for both sales as well as customer success, we're a big fan of doing group tutorials, group demos, and like group trainings, essentially. So on the sales side, they're called guided tours. On the success side, they're called success labs. So on the success side, we hold them 3 times a week. And essentially, each time it's a mixture of both Q&A as well as us showing them best practices for various different use cases and various different ways that they can use the platform for their upcoming event.
Okay, so I think we've used up the full hour. That's we don't always go this long. So that was great, Brendan. Thanks for the questions. And if there's any other questions, feel free to send them in to the admin at XCulture. Is that the
Yeah, so we know that the company owners, CEOs are very busy and can't deal with all the thousands of questions we get. So what we do is we use a catalog of the frequently asked questions, basically an archive. And if the question is repetitive, which is almost always, we can just copy and paste the answer we already have and don't bother the busy managers. But if it's a new question, and sometimes occasionally, maybe once a week, we get a question that we don't know how to answer. In that case, we will send the email to the company so that this way you could, yeah.
Okay, so Hoyan, I know, has another meeting. He's been holding
Yeah.
up. So thank you very much, Hoyan.
Thank you.
Sorry
Thank you.
to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, good timing. So thank you all, and yeah, I guess it is a good time to stop this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And we look forward to your reports.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone.
So Gordon, just send me the recording whenever you have it, today, tomorrow, and